Good day, and welcome to the Lilly Roddy Show, coming to you from the LRS studios here in Houston, Texas. Always glad to have you here to share my astrology with. And I hope you're all having a good summer. It's our normal hot and humid conditions here in Houston with occasional downpours. Now, this previous week, essentially June 28th through July 4th, this was such a busy time in our country. First, we had the killings of those innocent people in Charleston, South Carolina, the passing of the marriage equality, and the Supreme Court supporting President Obama's national health care plan. And all the while, Venus and Jupiter were conjuncting in Leo, President Obama's sign. He certainly benefited from the pass of that Jupiter through Leo. And one of the first things I want to talk about is the upcoming Venus retrograde, which will start in Virgo but will mostly be in Leo. Venus, our planet of love and money, is beginning her retrograde period on July 15th. She will be retrograde from mid-July through the latter part of September. Venus will be at her stationary retrograde point on July 25th. That's the day Venus stops moving forward against the background of the astrological signs and begins to move backwards. She will be stationary direct, meaning she's just about to go forward on September 17th, but she will not be back up to speed until about September the 25th. And Venus retrograde will be a time for all of us to review our relationships, business and personal. Those that are doing well, Venus retrograde is a time of renewal. For those with problems, this can be a time for looking for solutions. And for some, this is a time of endings with Venus retrograde. Traditionally, it's not a good time to begin a relationship under a Venus retrograde, but it's a better time to see people from your past. Venus retrograde often has to do with court cases coming to an end, especially those that have been in long litigation. Venus has a lot to do with money, and we'll want to be reviewing that part of our life as well. We will want to review our current financial situation and relieve ourselves of any problems that we have. And with Venus retrograde, we may feel a strong pushback from the opponents of marriage equality. But ultimately, Venus retrograde wants to know if we are really happy. Mars in Cancer in the USA. Now, Mars has moved into Cancer, and of course it'll be in Cancer for approximately 40 days. I think during these times we are more apt for increased violence locally, and especially potentially terrorist attacks through July 18th. I know that in the news I've seen there's a lot of information out about July 4th and sort of the strengthened concern about what's going on, but I sort of think that some of this energy will and continue through July 18th. And another thing to remember is that Mars is out of bounds from June 6th through July 18th. Now, out of bounds. This also means that Mars out of bounds means this strengthens the Mars impact on us, which can be direct, assertive, can make us feel defensive. Out of bounds is a term that relates to the notion of declination in astrology. And declination is how far north or south the planets are in relationship to the equator. Now, if you remember as a child, on the world globe, there's an area that's called the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. I have a poor drawing here. Here's the equator right there, and then we have these two areas on the globe. One's the Tropic of Cancer, that's in the northern hemisphere, and then the Tropic of Capricorn's in the southern hemisphere. And this is considered the area of the Earth that gets the most direct sunlight. So when planets moving north or south of the equator are either greater or than 26 degrees and 23 minutes, north or south, these planets are said to be out of bounds. And as these are very significant planets in your natal chart, and I would really encourage you to look that up and put that into your chart. Now, because the planets move out of bounds, this essentially sort of accentuates their power. The Sun and Saturn are the only planets that don't go out of bounds. And usually the only time planets can be out of bounds or if they're in the summer signs, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, or the winter signs, Sag, Capricorn, and Aquarius. It's not the same for Pluto. Pluto tends to be, well, it's in Leo and Aquarius is when Pluto is out of bounds. Now, Pallas Athena, which is the asteroid of being connected to work and having a good business strategy, and Ceres are both out of bounds as well right now. The out of bounds Ceres would make us more concerned about our home and our homeland, while Pallas Athena encourages us to have a good strategy before we take any action. And also in declination is where you hear the terms parallel and contraparallel. We'll revisit this area several times over this year, and I'll sort of talk more and more about declination. It's a very important measurement in astrology, but it's not one that's used very often. And it has a tendency to be related more to the Earth rather than the Sun. And that would be because the measurements are made off the equator rather than the ecliptic or the apparent path of the Sun through the sky. Now, for the week of July 5th through the 11th, generally the energies in the sky for the week are fairly good. People should be feeling more optimistic the 5th, the 8th, and the 9th. And there are no extra long void moon days. And the good thing is that I don't see any really for the next couple of weeks. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions about the Republican nominees. Now, there's a lot of them out there, and so really I'm just sort of waiting for the field to narrow down before I start looking at charts. And I do essentially do the same thing for the Democratic candidates as well. But I can tell you I've been following elections for many years now, and really what counts in a chart is how good does your chart look on election day. And often it can be ultimately that simple. Just how powerful is your chart on that day. So despite whatever charts are out there, and whether or not the actual birth times and birth information that we have from candidates, they may or may not be true depending on their own ability to, maybe they don't feel safe about putting their information out there. Now, of course, we had a big event with this with President Obama, and whether or not his birth certificate was the right one, and was he born in another country, all of this other stuff. Now, I wanted to point out a little bit about President Obama's chart and what has been going on in the most recent time. Now, President Obama has Moon in Gemini squaring his Pluto in Virgo. His Moon's at 3 and his Pluto's at 6. Now, this kind of square in anyone's natal chart would indicate an unsettled early family life, struggles with the mother, feeling safe, etc. Now, Neptune was affecting President Obama's chart, his Moon and his Pluto, during 2013 and 2014. He was at a low ebb, and if you remember, he didn't come across as a very powerful leader, especially with his encounters with Putin. Now, we look now and we see a much different President Obama with Jupiter moving through Leo, the president's sign. He's more present and seems to have a better sense of self-confidence as 2015 got underway. 2016, President Obama would be having a strong Saturn transit and actually making contact with the same planets that Neptune did, his moon, and Pluto. And Saturn will be moving through his career sector in the upper portion of his chart. Now, this can be a great chance for him to do some really great work. And I wanted to point out historically that with Saturn's movement into Sagittarius, just like it is now, when Saturn moved into Sag in 1957, this was the time that Castro came to power. And here we are 2 cycles later under Saturn in Sag, and we are reestablishing our connection to that country. Now currently, Saturn is retrograde in Scorpio, but in August she will move forward and back into Sag, and we'll start having regular airline travel between these 2 countries. Now, Saturn doesn't move back into Sag until September, but we'll feel that energy moving forward. And just as a note, Saturn in Sag always makes the USA re-examine its borders and boundaries, since we are a Sagittarius rising country. Look for more of this sort of border boundary stuff to come up over the next 2 years. Well, anyway, thank you for joining me this week as we look at what's going on with the planets around us and how they're affecting our lives. I hope you're enjoying my new show format. I know that I am. I feel a lot more connected to it and am more excited about what I'm having to say. If you want to get in touch with me, please feel free to try and reach me at lillyroddyshow.com, on my email, lillyroddyshow@aol.com, or find us on Twitter, Pinterest, or Facebook. This is the Lilly Roddy Show, coming to you from the LRS studios here in Houston, Texas, reminding you to keep those stars in your eyes. Bye-bye.